If you lived through the 90s, you might remember going to Office Depot or your local office supply store and buying computer software in cardboard boxes that contained little floppy disks. You'd open the box, get the disk out, and slide it into a port in your computer. One that I particularly remember came in a green box and was called Netscape Navigator, and it was an early internet browser, originally launched in 1994 by Jim Clark and Mark Andreessen, and it was a big deal. In fact, Netscape was arguably the first spark that ignited the raging inferno we now refer to as the dot-com boom. When the company originally launched in 1994, it was an immediate success. This essay is going to break down why the Netscape moment happened, why it was such a pivotal moment in the history of technology, but more importantly, the real lesson for you, the knowledge worker in 2026 trying to keep your job, is not what Netscape did right, but what they did wrong and how you can learn from it. But on the surface, the story starts out as a classic David and Goliath saga. Netscape, led by Andreessen, was a scrappy Silicon Valley startup of about 250 people. It was a company full of ideologues who dreamed of making the internet accessible to everyday people instead of just the niche hacker culture that made up its current user base. It was working. They created the first web browser to really find market adoption, with nearly 15 million user downloads by the end of 1995. In August of the same year, only 10 months after the first product launch, Netscape took the company public, IPOing at a valuation of $3 billion, a massive sum for a tech startup in the 90s, especially one that had yet to turn a profit. This made even the comfortable giant Microsoft start to take the idea of the internet seriously. But more than the massive user adoption or the IPO, what really got the attention of Mr. Gates was when Mark Andreessen publicly stated that his company would reduce Microsoft to, quote, a poorly debugged set of device drivers, which is effectively telling the massive incumbent that it would soon be reduced from star player to the dirt that the new team played upon. Given that Bill Gates has the competitive spirit of Michael Jordan mixed with the callous business ethics of a Rockefeller, it's not surprising that he very quickly went code red, sending out an internet tidal wave memo to the entire company, making it an internet-first company almost literally overnight. By the end of 1995, Microsoft had begun including Internet Explorer free with Windows. This began a phase known as the browser wars. On paper, the matchup did not look like a fair fight. Microsoft had 72 times the number of employees as Netscape and developed software in a highly professional corporate motion, whereas Netscape, with the aforementioned 250 total people, was known for a culture of hackers who embraced a worse is better philosophy when it came to coding. The program had to work, but speed was more important than anything else. The real cost of arriving second was orders of magnitude greater than arriving first in a vehicle held together by duct tape. So they worked 20 hours a day, slept under their desks, and shipped ugly code that got the job done. This new school approach was messy and imperfect, and it allowed Netscape to get to market extremely quickly. In reality, get to market is not quite accurate for Netscape, since the market for the internet essentially was non-existent before they first launched. That's how big of a shift we're talking about here. Netscape wasn't getting to market, they were creating the market from scratch as they went. Within just 4 months of its release, the company held a dominant 75% of market share of all internet users. It appeared that worse really was better, and Netscape seemed untouchable, even by Goliath. But there's another principle that will consume the worse is better principle if it's not careful. And unfortunately, this other principle was Microsoft's strength. This principle goes like this: distribution beats innovation. It means that no matter how life-changing your software is, if you don't control distribution, you'll lose to someone who does. And that's exactly what happened when Microsoft started including Internet Explorer free with downloads of Windows. Since the operating system of most home computers at the time was Windows, once they released Internet Explorer 3, which was roughly at parity with Netscape in 1996, it became easier and easier for users to just use what was already installed. Then, to make matters worse, Microsoft started telling computer companies like Dell and Compaq, who also used Windows on their devices, that if they made deals with Netscape, then Microsoft would start raising prices for their Windows licenses. This was Gates' internet tidal wave in action, and by all accounts, it was illegal. In November of 1998, the Department of Justice actually sued Microsoft for forming a monopoly to crush their competition, namely Netscape. It proved too little too late for the fledgling startup. Combined with a few other strategic errors, not the least of which was the decision to abandon the worse is better principle in favor of a slow, methodical 4-year rollout of a new version. Netscape eventually tapped out. The damage done by the Microsoft tidal wave eventually forced Netscape to sell to AOL. It's tempting to take as the moral of this story that regardless of how it went in the Bible, in the real world, Goliath normally crushes David. Honestly, that's pretty much the way that it works. The only difference today is that AI is taking the same David and Goliath relationship down to the employee level, with AI itself playing Goliath and us as knowledge workers playing David. Unlike in the Bible, knowledge workers don't beat Goliath. They survive him through speed. Netscape started out strong, and despite the Microsoft monopoly, many feel that if they'd continued to iterate quickly, would have managed to hold on and would have lived to become a premium brand like Apple in today's modern tech stack. Now, to clarify, with regard to AI, I'm not talking about execution speed. AI is excellent at that. I actually find it instructive to think about it like this. Bill Gates' memo to kill Netscape was called the internet tidal wave. Now, imagine you're looking at a tidal wave from the side. You have the front of the wave. It's frothy, uneven, ever-changing, and always threatening to close in on you. The farther back you go, you run into pure, consistent power pushing the wall of water forward. Now imagine there's a spectrum down at the base of the wave, running from the back to the front. At the very back, you write distribution kills innovation. And at the other end of the spectrum, you write worse is better. Now imagine Netscape as a surfer trying to outrun this massive wave. If they stop, which they did in 1997 when they decided to rebuild the product from the ground up, the wave crushes you, which it did. Viewing things through this lens makes the to-do list crystal clear. Surf the wave. Don't wipe out. Don't try to compete with the wave. Don't try to become the wave. Surf it. Worse is better because you don't have time to stop and make things perfect. Just figure out how to stay on the board. Think about this quote from one of the greatest surfers who ever lived. And I want you to focus specifically on how to apply this to how you work with and think about AI. Your surfing can get better on every turn, on every wave you catch. Learn to read the ocean better. A big part of my success has been wave knowledge. Kelly Slater.